What an opening half, capped off by a Will Lutz manageable field goal miss set up by Traquan Smith. Mike Zimmer, like Joe Buck said, prides himself on special teams as well. And that return, it's not gonna go unnoticed by Mike Zimmer. He's really a tough coach. Very very serious guy. Besides that, Vikings doing what they do best. They're getting these seals on the perimeter, and couple linemen, pulling out, making it effectively a power play. And then once you get Dalvin Cook and his big body going, he could always fall forward for a few yards. But they're doing the same exact thing that I saw them kill the Dallas Cowboys with on a Sunday night game, and they're just running that toss play and these outside plays to the I keep saying the perimeter. I'm repeating myself, getting repetitive, and it's just really working. And Coach Zimmer, he's not calling the plays, but his philosophy is do what works. That's mostly every coach's philosophy. They can still run in between the tackles, but the staple of their game right now is really going, outside where the tight ends would be. But, once you got Thielen and a good blocker and he's sealing off that defensive end, and you got called for a ticky-tacky hold. You got a ticky-tacky holding call on him. So the Vikings, they're really doing well. There was one play that I thought should have been pass interference, and we'll see how much that affected the game. And there was also a false start, which was followed by a Thielen fumble, which actually should have blown the play dead. And NFL officials, when they're not perfect, it's really hard to say that they don't affect the game, because that fumble set up at least 3 points. I believe it was they didn't score a touchdown, so it set up a field goal. And if that was a false start, then who knows how that half would have gone, because that fumble should have never happened. The play should have been blown dead. So, without perfect officiating, Saints get a break, and they get 3 points. They also get 3 points on well, they don't get 3 points. They got a break with the non-pass interference call, PJ Williams hooking Kyle Rudolph. And that's why, you're a fan of the game. You only really notice when the officials get the call incorrect. You don't really notice when they get it correct, which is a majority of the time. So they really do have, effects on games. They really do influence the game, whether or not you realize it. And it's bogus when they say, oh, the officials made terrible mistakes, but it didn't influence the game. We saw that in the Minneapolis Miracle, where the Vikings shouldn't even have been in that game, and I wrote an article on it. But the NFL took the YouTube videos down. So when I show you the video evidence of the bad officiating in that game, the Vikings should never even been in that game. They were outplayed. But the Saints, it's not really they had one big play where Taysom Hill throws the ball deep, and you kind of get it's not really a double move, but you kind of get an angular post route where he's faking corner and he goes post. And that's a throw that's a pass that Taysom Hill can make and Drew Brees can't make, as you saw on the interception later in the half. Drew Brees cannot throw the ball far, and that's been the case for at least 2.5 years now, or almost 3 years. So that's where the interception came in, because his arm he's not a tall guy. He doesn't, and his arm is pretty much it's shot, which is why I believe the Saints couldn't really go far in the playoffs this year, because you could just keep everything in front of you. But the Saints offense, it's somewhat efficient, not really all that efficient. You could argue Kirk Cousins is playing better than, I don't want to say he's playing better than Drew Brees. You had a couple instances where they took Danielle Hunter and Griffin and you put them on the interior of the line. And that's because, Drew Brees is not the tallest guy. 5'10" is probably average height for a guy. But quarterback, it's kind of short, or it's a little bit short. And you kind of get hands in his face, And like the announcer said, the tackles for the Saints, I believe one of them is Ramczyk. They're really stout. So you kind of get the mismatch inside, and you kind of walk them up to the line of scrimmage, and you don't even have them in set stances, and they are allowed what seems to be a free range of motion, even though it's on the interior of the line because they're able to do a spin move, you know. So Mike Zimmer, very well coached game. Kirk Cousins, he's efficient, but the ball's not being placed exactly on point. Thielen's kind of had to, dive to the ground for a few of these passes, but overall a decent game. We're not seeing a whole lot of scoring, and that's a test to both teams' defenses. The goal line stop for the Saints is huge because you could really argue the Vikings are just flat out outplaying the Saints right now. But that goal line stop where the defensive end fights through the double team and Demario Davis has free range, to run sideline to sideline, and he meets Cook basically in the backfield. That really might be the difference in keeping the Saints in the game. So, privileged to watch this game so far. Two great coaches, Mike Zimmer, Sean Payton, and we'll see what happens in the second half.